You ready? Okay, we're rolling. Hey everyone, Happy New Year and welcome back to Alpha Male Barbers. My name is Nicolaou, and today in the chair with the barber I have an actor who was in Doctor Who and Harry Potter, Simon Fisher-Becker.
Hello and Happy New Year.
Thanks for coming. I know Simon through him being a customer of the barbershop. So probably maybe half a year-ish.
Yes.
Yeah?
I moved into the area October 18.
Okay. Yeah.
And I've been 3 or 4 times. Yeah. Maybe,
Probably a bit more than that.
maybe 5, 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I tend to come to you when I'm sort of in the area and I think, oh, yes, I probably better go with that.
Yeah, because you're a busy man.
Well, yes, it's just something that you don't try and diarise, really. I know you have this system where you have to book on certain days, but I prefer to have a spontaneous thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. So, because I'm not much of a TV person, I hadn't seen the kind of things that you've been on. So when you came into the shop, I didn't have any idea who you were. I'm always fascinated by different customers, which is why I always put effort into all of my customers, because you never know who's going to be sat in the chair.
No, I have to say you're very good at relaxing somebody who's new to you and just chatting away. It's great. Because in the distant past, I've just sat in the chair, said nothing all day, all the time. Fine, they haven't quite done what I asked for. And hand over some money and go. Yeah. But at least it's a more of a social occasion here.
Yeah, I feel as a barber, my aim is to always make the person in the chair feel as comfortable as possible. So, and then obviously you have some great conversation, and then you get these kind of connections out of it, which is, basically what intrigues me about my job. So with that being said, you have a fan base in the sci-fi world, you told me.
Yes, I'm an actor. I got my equity card, which is a union card, in 1987.
What's that card?
It's good. It's British Actors Equity. It's known as an equity card. At one time, you couldn't do certain work unless you had an equity contract.
Okay.
And then that was considered illegal when union legislation was changed under a certain regime in the 1980s. So people don't have to be in the union to get work.
Right, okay.
Because it was considered a closed shop.
Right, now anybody can jump in.
Now anyone can wake up any day, any morning and say, today I'll be an actor.
Right.
No training, no understanding of the industry, and more importantly, no backup for them if something goes wrong.
Right, but obviously not as easy as that to just jump in.
No, well, yeah, it is in the sense that if you find a way of finding where the work is, you just need to let people know you're on the planet.
Right, yeah.
Whereas when it was the days of equity, there was at a certain point the chicken and egg syndrome.
Right.
You couldn't get the work because you weren't a member of equity, but you needed work to join equity.
Okay.
But what happened was there were certain producers that had equity contracts issued for people who were starting out.
Okay.
And then in my day, I had to get 32 weeks work.
Right.
In 2 years.
Okay. But you weren't always an actor?
Oh, no. I mean, before then, I was in the civil service.
Okay.
And the civil service was being thinned out through another regime.
Right.
Wanted to privatise certain sections of the civil service. And they didn't call it at the time, but it was effectively voluntary redundancy.
Okay.
And so with that bag of money, I went and did a postgraduate drama course.
How old?
So this would have been 1984. I started my course in September '84, so and I was born in '61, so maybe 23.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've done it ever since?
More or less. I mean, when you first start out, it's not so easy to get regular work. So you have to get, quote, a proper job.
Right,
to pay for your mortgage or your rent or anything. But anyone who's a freelance in any field will say the same, that when they start out, they do have to have a second job initially.
Right, yeah.
Until they've got themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, today some people can be in drama college today and find they've suddenly got a job and they're in a soap.
Right, yeah.
And they get their notoriety and almost immediately, and they can find they're in that soap for 5 years.
Yeah.
And that, I have to say, those are very, very, very lucky people.
Right, okay.
That happens to. Other people can work 30 years and just call themselves a jobbing actor, don't have any notoriety at all, have a reasonable living.
Okay.
And if they're a member of Equity, you can join the Equity pension scheme.
Right.
And if you get work with the BBC, they have a pension scheme as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, you have to have a second job. And so when I talk to drama students, I used to use the phrase "learn to type."
Right. Okay.
Because in my day, you used to get an admin job somewhere,
right.
or have a certain skill, and that would give you regular temp work. It's not so easy today, I understand.
When you were on the radio, was that your second job?
We were talking earlier about the community radio.
Yeah.
It was an opportunity that came along.
Okay.
So, as do most things, you've got to keep your ears open as well as your eyes.
Yeah.
And an opportunity came along to do some community radio. And I thought, because I like the environment of a studio.
Yeah.
With the mic in front.
Yeah.
And so I thought I'd try it. And because I was a little cautious, I chose the graveyard hour.
Right.
Thinking that nobody would be listening.
So the graveyard hour is...
Well, I had a show from 11 p.m. right the way through to 5 or 6 a.m.
Okay.
And it was very good. Yeah. The only thing I had real difficulty initially was, although it was that late hour, there were still news bulletins which we grabbed from other stations.
Okay.
And so I had to sort of flick all the switches
right.
to go and now over to the news and do it in time.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like you gained out of being on the radio, which helped you in your career?
Firstly, built confidence. Secondly, I mean, I joke that I didn't think anyone was listening, but I was very surprised. There was one time where I just happened to make a flippant comment that I was hungry. It's early in the morning, and I fancied some breakfast.
Right.
And about an hour later, 2 people turned up with a breakfast.
What time would that have been?
And so that would have been, I think at the time it was about 2 or 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
In the morning, and that did shake me slightly, that people were actually listening to what I was saying.
I think no matter where you are, what your platform is, what you're talking about, there's always somebody listening.
Yes, and it is interesting. What I did learn is that there's, not necessarily learn, but it sort of brought home, is people work 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So you've got nurses, doctors,
yeah.
ambulance people, fire crew, and no matter. And there's a lot of lorry drivers who move their goods around very late at night and early in the morning to avoid most of the traffic during the day. So they do, if they tune in, they are listening, and there's a lot of them. And it is interesting if you try and do like a talk show with them,
right?
What they have to say.
Yeah, because these are the people that us that work the normal hours of the day don't see.
Yeah. So normal hours is a funny phrase nowadays.
Yeah, there's not normal hours anymore. It's just.
I heard on the radio apparently the concept of a Saturday job. He's waning.
Yeah.
It used to be. I mean, it was ideal for kids, really, or people 16.
Yeah.
To get, quote, a Saturday job. I personally never had a Saturday job.
Right.
But I had other jobs. My very first job, I was about 14.
Okay.
I did a milk round.
Okay.
Chap called Charlie for Express Dairy. And I learned a lot on that. And I only did it for about 6 months, because then it was deemed it could be potentially child slavery.
Really?
Although at the end of the week I was getting a pocket of money.
Yeah.
And I was learning lots of things. And Charlie was, at the time, he would have probably retired 5 years later.
Oh, okay.
So I learned a lot. And one of the big things I learned was one day he said to me, Mrs. Warren hasn't taken in her milk for 2 days.
Okay.
So he stopped and knocked on the door. And there was no reply at all. He then asked a neighbour if they'd seen Mrs. Warren, and they had. She just hadn't taken her milk in.
Oh, okay.
But it was a social thing, a community thing.
Right.
There was somebody there. So, say, for example, Mrs. Warren had fallen down her stairs.
Yeah.
That sort of him spotting out.
Yeah.
Because today you hear very sad stories of people being found in their homes and they've been dead for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But it was good fun. But then some goody two-shoes felt I didn't need that life's experience or that pocket money.
Yeah.
But there you go.
So, with you being an actor, was it something that when you got into the drama school, was this what you'd planned, or was this what you expected at the time when you started?
Looking back, I now know that inside I probably did want to be an actor from about the age of 6 or 7.
Okay.
But at the time of being 6 or 7, there was no conversation or anything about it at all. I used to go to the theatre a lot. One of my very early remembrances is going to Panto.
Okay.
Going to Panto. My mother was a nurse, and one of the hospitals she worked at, a gift to the hospital was a box at the Albert Hall.
Okay.
And at some West End theatres.
Right.
And so the nurses used to take it in turn to go get free tickets to go and certain things. So I think when I was in the womb,
right,
I subconsciously was receiving all these sounds and things. Because when I did my very first experience of acting, which was in 1977 for a production of Oliver at school, I was simply told I was going to be Mr. Bumble.
Right,
because I was the largest person on the planet.
Right.
And I would fit the frog. And the very idea of doing it terrified me. But once we got into rehearsal, I found some things I could do quite naturally and instinctively, having had no experience at all. Other things, naturally, I had to work at.
Right.
And the thing, and even now some people say that I have a presence.
Right.
I don't know where that came from, right? I just don't know where that came from at all. So then at school when I did Mr. Bumble, I had the experience, and I will say I got the bug.
Right, okay.
And I had the appetite. And the good thing about it was that generally through my school days, I was either student grey, nobody knew me at all. Okay. Or I was bullied.
Okay.
And so I had this massive inferiority complex. But doing this production of Oliver, people started to praise.
Right.
And I will admit that it was the sudden turnaround, that I might have done something good. But the idea of becoming a professional actor or anything didn't cross my mind at all. And I went into the civil service. Whilst there, I did my degree in business administration. But I specialised in the arts. Okay. Because the arts department then literally was a broom cupboard in the science and technology department.
Right, okay.
It's only now it's become, I think it's a cultural and media and sport is one big cabinet office now.
Right.
But then it literally was a broom cupboard. That was my idea. But then they came along and said, thank you very much. You don't have to go, but if you do, we'll give you a bag of money.
Okay.
So with this bag of money, I went to drama college.
Right.
And used that to get through it. And it was a postgraduate course that was very practical. So I came away knowing how to do certain things. I even got a certificate in riding horses and doing stagecraft and all that sort of
Okay.
But what the college course didn't teach me, and to my annoyance now, I find colleges today, they don't actually tell students the reality of finding work.
No. Obviously.
So you're just spat out.
Yeah.
And then you have to sort of end up, in a deep, deep pond, and then you have to...
Every man for himself.
And you just have to find out for yourself. And when I started out, there was a newspaper called Stage and Television Today.
Okay.
And in the back, there were about 7 or 8 pages of jobs.
Okay.
And you just applied. Applied.
And hope for the best.
And hope for the best. And gradually, you started getting responses.
Right.
And of course, there was no internet,
Yeah.
no mobile phones.
Yeah.
It was all done by
Letter.
letter or telephone.
Right. Okay.
If you left your telephone. And I didn't get my first mobile phone until 1999.
Okay.
So, and I started out properly in 1987.
Wow. Okay.
Right. So,
Yeah.
So, but it is, I mean, it's interesting since being asked to sort of write my autobiography. Thinking back, I think to myself, well, how is it I did that?
Yeah.
And then in conversation, so you'll get your first audition, you get your first job. Then from that, people will talk to you and they'll say, oh, did you see there was this job, X, Y, Z?
Right.
And then you discover that there's another professional outlet called PCR. I think it meant Production Company Report.
Okay.
And it will tell you what jobs were going on.
Right.
But it was a bit gossipy as well.
Okay.
And I didn't really want to know who was bedding who.
Right.
Right. I just wanted to know what's the next job, where can I get it? But it was very good. So you start out there, and then people tell you about this production company, that production company, or have you heard of this agent? Have you heard of that agent?
Right.
And that's how it evolved for me.
Okay.
Now, some people will probably say it was very different, and it depends on what area of the industry you go into. I have subsequently talking to some of my friends and some other people that if they went down the musical theatre route, it was very different, but in my mind easier,
Right.
because you suddenly became known as a troupe. And there's a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, who really was in the original productions of a lot of West End musicals.
Right.
And they were able to go from one job to
Okay.
another. And I have subsequently spoken to some of the older generation actors who never had a place to live other than their dressing room. Of the
Because they were
theatre.
always on the road.
Because they always went from one job to another.
Yeah, yeah.
And if they had like a week or two to spare, they would do what we now call sofa surfing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's how they were able to live and survive until they could afford to buy their own place.
Wow. What do you love about acting? What is it?
Oh, I've been asked this a lot, and there's various things. On a personal level, I love the idea of a blank page, and particularly if you're working on a project that's a new play.
Okay.
So somebody's written it, only finished last week.
Right.
So having a blank page, having some rehearsal time to work on and develop a character.
Right.
And then say to a group of people, look, this is what we've been working on.
Right.
What do you think? Right. But more importantly, I find that the more I work, particularly with live theatre, is I come away thinking, this is what I do. I know
Yeah.
it sounds a bit pompous, but
No, I know. What it is.
I think some people know. It's like some people are interested in engineering,
Yeah.
or other people are interested in dressmaking or making cakes. There is a sort of satisfaction that is difficult to explain. All you know is, this is what I do.
I get it cutting hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cutting hair
Yeah,
is
yeah.
your thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And whatever you do in your day or your life, ultimately it goes back to you cutting your hair.
Yeah.
So that's it, and it's just enjoyable, really, and being in a team.
Right.
And it's exactly the same with film and television. It's just a different medium, but ultimately the actor is the least important person in the line. Right. Some people will disagree, but generally speaking, television and film is a technical medium.
Yeah.
And you will find, particularly if you're a visiting artist, that when it comes to a shot, if the lighting, the sound, and whatever other thing has to happen in the scene happens, and it all looks good and it all sounds good, then it's not so important how good the actor is.
Yeah.
And having read a lot of autobiographies, it's amazing the number of big name actors who say that their best work's on the cutting room floor.
Right.
It's just something went wrong with the lighting in another shot.
Yeah.
Or if they had to part some sheep in a scene.
Right.
There was only one shot where the sheep parted perfectly.
Right. Yeah.
And also, the challenge in filming is you don't film in order. If you do a play, you start,
right,
and you go all the way through, and you finish
like a story.
And so, in some ways, you have more control.
Right.
But with film, they might decide your last scene is the first scene you do.
Okay.
It all depends on who's available, what's available, what the weather is.
Yeah.
Does
that make it difficult for you, because now you have to kind of imagine that the part that you're doing now, the follow-up, you've already done, so you had to imagine you've already done something you haven't done yet.
Yeah, you have to rely on the directors to actually explain where you are on the arc.
Okay.
You have to rely on that. But more and more, you're not told.
Okay.
Because more and more what's happening now is secrecy.
Right.
Because they don't want anything to get out.
Okay.
So, and there's so many projects I've done where I don't even know the name of the project.
Wow.
It's known as Project 19.
Oh, okay.
Or, but you don't actually know what the final...
this is a new thing?
It can be. Well, it's a thing I've noticed in the last... I've been so long at it, I would say the last 10 years.
Right.
But more prevalent now. I mean, to the extent I was sent, somebody wanted to read for a film, or I don't even know if it was film or television.
Right, okay.
All I had was top secret at the thing.
Wow.
No character name. The only thing, any northern accent. Okay. Northern English accent.
Right.
Well, that could be anything from Scouse to Geordie.
Yeah.
You see. And that's it. Then what they gave me to read, learn, and put on a tape was a scene from an American film called Fargo. Okay. So then I think, maybe this is actually going to be an American production. That's all you could think about.
Right.
Anyway, I did it, and I didn't get the job. Okay. So I am now in the position where I can't even tell you what I didn't get. Right? It's so silly. And sometimes in the past, somebody, thank you for coming in. Here's the script, so they don't even tell you beforehand.
Right.
You might get it whilst you're hanging around outside waiting for your turn. Okay. No instructions at all. And it's only 1 or 2 pages. You don't know what's gone on before. You don't know what's going to happen after. And generally speaking, most scripts could be read in multiple styles. So it could be a comedy, or it could be a tragedy, it could be a drama, it could be something historic, but you don't know, and you're not told. So when you take a script like this, at what point do you figure out, right, this is the direction I'm going to go with it in? Because you may be going in a completely opposite direction, but you don't know. What do you feel like is... Well, this is what I was sort of indicating, really, because sometimes you read through it and it could be delivered in different ways. So, for example, there could be just one line that is no. Right. And so no could be no. Right. Or it could be no,
Right.
or it could be no. You know, just
And that changes the whole.
and it can change the whole meaning of that whole scene.
Right. Do you think that they actually know what they want, or do you feel like they just want to see how it gets played out by different people, and then they'll choose what they like best?
I think it can be just a mixture of them all. I mean, sometimes you do go in and you're given a load of waffle. They're going on and on and on. You don't really understand what they're talking about.
Right.
And then they finish it off by saying, "Well, you know what I mean."
Yeah.
And of course you don't.
Well, people do that with their haircuts as well.
Yeah.
They'll tell me they want all sorts of things that contradict what they just said, and then they'll say, "You know what? Just do what you want."
But now I've been doing it for so long, some things are instinctive.
Right.
Now with Dorham in Doctor Who, Dorham Moldovan, for the audition piece, it just said, "Large blue man, think Sydney Greenstreet."
Okay.
Well, I'm large. They
Right.
could easily paint me blue.
Right, which they did.
Which they did. And I know Sydney Greenstreet. He was a very large English actor who did very well in Hollywood.
Okay.
And he appeared in a film called Casablanca,
Right.
where he played a black marketeer.
Okay.
And in a white suit, Signora Montefiore. And he also wore a fez. Now, for those who watch Doctor Who, one of the gimmicks, or two of the gimmicks for Matt Smith, who was the Doctor when I was in it, was he wore bow ties and a fez.
It's a hat.
So for those who know Tommy Cooper, a comedian, he wore this red Egyptian style hat.
Okay.
With some tassels on it.
Oh, right. I know what you mean.
Yes. Yeah. So I knew who Sydney Greenstreet was, so that gave me an idea of deportment.
Okay.
Because he was a large man who spoke very quickly, but movement-wise, he was quite still.
Okay.
So that's all I knew.
Right.
And he's a black marketeer. The dialogue was pretty straightforward. It said set homage to Star Wars.
Right.
So it gave me an idea of what the set would look like.
Okay.
And that was it. And I must admit, thereafter, I had no conversation about the character at all.
Okay. They just let you do your thing after that.
So what I have learned, now I've got older, is generally speaking, they think you're experienced enough, and if they like what you do, they leave it.
Yeah.
And then occasionally you might get a phrase, "That's very good, darling. Could you give us an alternative?"
Okay.
An alternative. So that's not saying it was shite. It's just that, give us an alternative so we got something to work with.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah,
But they'll shoot things a few times. Though.
It used to be. You used to get several takes of things, but nowadays, and again, particularly television, you might get one or two takes if you're lucky.
Okay.
Yeah. And if they like it, they'll keep it, and if they don't, they'll ask for something else.
Right. What? So, when you fly overseas, you just come back from a cruise, a Doctor Who cruise. You're talking to people on stage. There's people that are fans of yours that actually go out of their way to want to meet you. Do you find that bizarre that that's your job?
I find it bizarre that it's part of my job, and it's become good fun. And you've got to agree with me. What better job is there for an actor than to be paid to talk about themselves all day long?
Yeah, for sure.
It is bizarre. It is concerning. Even now, there's certain actors I meet on certain jobs that I've never met before, and it can be a bit overwhelming.
In what way?
Well, if they're big heroes, I mean, you're into sport more, aren't you?
Not all sports,
but some sports.
Okay.
But if there's a particular sport you follow and there's a particular icon and they were to walk in, you will initially go
Starstruck.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. And then Starstruck, it can affect you in different ways. You either become completely dumb, you can't talk at all, or you pass out, right?
Right.
Or you start saying the most stupid things because you don't know what to say.
Right.
And I've been like that.
Do you see it on both ends?
So now I see it from both ends, because now at conventions I see these people coming up to, and their hands are shaking.
Wow.
Like this, and they're having difficulty to breathing and things. So what I've learned is to quickly help them calm down.
Okay.
And I normally make some asinine remark. Something, it's okay, I fart just like you, is one phrase I use.
Right.
And that makes them laugh, and
Right.
then they relax, and it's okay. And then they really enjoy it, and it is very fulfilling, particularly the younger fans, to see them look up at their parents and walk away with a bounce.
Right. Okay.
That made their day.
Yeah. So do you find it weird, because everybody's a regular person realistically, but because of the direction you've been in and where you've positioned yourself, people actually want to go out their way to see you, but you still in yourself feel like a regular person.
You see, it's before I got Doctor Who, I was just a jobbing actor. Some people would recognise me in things,
Right.
but I wouldn't necessarily call them fans. But somebody might come up to me at a petrol station and say,
Okay.
"Did I see you on the telly?"
Right.
last
Okay.
night?" Sort of
Yeah.
thing. Just occasionally I would. Since Doctor Who, I'm not instantly recognised because I'm not bald.
Yeah.
And
blue.
I'm not blue.
Yeah.
But the fans will know who I was, or they'll look at me in a funny way and say, "Are you?" And it's my voice that gives it away.
Right.
It's the voice they recognise.
Because then they have to kind of imagine.
But I know what it's like to be overwhelmed, and I do find it. First of all, I'm totally amazed at the number of people who come to the events, and then even more amazed that they come to my table, and then amazed again that when we do separate Q&As, or what they call panels,
Right.
that they'll choose to come to my panel rather than somebody else's.
Okay.
And at a certain level, I feel an obligation to that. But as you know, I love talking. You get asked the same questions all the time, really. But then occasionally you get something right out of left field, and you've got to think on your feet.
Okay.
And a thing I found out a couple of times last year is that people actually do listen to what I say, and some actually act on it,
Right.
which has become a little more disturbing.
Is that, do you feel like you've got more sense of responsibility?
Yes. Yeah. But I had a couple of times, there was a guy who came to me and he said, as soon as I found out you were going to be here, I booked my ticket.
Wow.
And it turned out his story, he suffers from depression, and he was on the point of ending it. But for whatever reason, he decided to switch the television on, and there was a scene of me, for those who don't know, my character ends up with his head in a box.
Okay.
Delivering dialogue, and some of the dialogue is quite funny.
Okay.
And he saw that and immediately cheered him up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So he wanted to come and say thank you, because
Wow.
that got him out of that hole.
Wow.
Then a couple of weeks later, somebody else said, I'm bunking off work.
Right.
They wouldn't let me have the day off, so I've thrown a sickie.
Wow.
And the way for conventions, when we're booked, it's subject to availability. So I could have quite easily had to cancel. And so after that, I'm thinking more seriously that if I can, I'll try not to cancel events.
Yeah, because somebody may be relying
So
on
that's
you to
maybe sort of thing. And again, as I say, they ask advice on things. I've become a sort of agony uncle.
to people about anything.
About anything, but they've come to see my show,
Right.
and I might have said something.
Okay.
And there is a lot of, when you said ...
Right.
They'll then tell a similar story,
Okay.
or they'll want more clarification on, because I'm often asked how I deal with rejection. And a lot of people nowadays sort of go quite downhill about it.
Yeah.
I personally hate it, and initially on that day you get a bit thingy, but I find that once I've slept on it, I've bounced back.
Yeah, it's not as big of a problem.
And there's generally, I have a feeling of it'll be better tomorrow.
Yeah, which it is.
Oh, was it Gone with the Wind, Tara's, that she says, after all, tomorrow is another day. Well, part of me feels that.
Yeah.
And it can't get any worse than it has.
Yeah.
And then if you really do feel rock bottom, then the only way is up. I
Yeah.
know that sounds a bit trite, and maybe some other people have said it, but it is very true. And so I try and say how I've dealt with something. I never say, this is what you have to do.
Yeah.
This is what worked for me.
Yeah.
And then it could be something different, like I'm starting out in the industry, and somebody's just told me I need a show reel. What's a show reel? Well, if they've been to college, they should know, and the college, they should have let them out with a show reel. And for those who don't know, it's a demo tape.
Right.
You have a selection of things of you in different guises.
Yeah.
So that future employers will have an idea of what you can do, and more importantly, how you actually look on camera.
Right.
And so I've made suggestions. I've even recommended people to go to help them. And then, it could be years later, they'll say, "Oh, I'm glad I see you. I did everything you said, and now as a result."
Oh wow. Okay.
And a couple of times they've gone down a completely different field. They went down the drama route, but in the end they've now become lecturers in things like health and safety,
Right.
and
Okay.
things like that, and they found that was more profitable.
I read some of your reviews online about your one-man show,
Yes.
and there's aspiring actors and performers on there that said that they seem to take a lot from it.
Mm.
Is it for those reasons that you're giving them the what to do's?
I was very lucky. I came across some very helpful people
Right.
on my path, if we're going to say that, and I found en route there are lots of people who are very helpful indeed, very helpful. And if they can't help you with what you're trying to do immediately, they'll know somebody who can.
Yeah.
You then got the well-intentioned who actually think they know how things work, and they deliver it with such a positive force that you think they know what they're talking about.
Right.
It's only later that you find that they don't know.
Right.
They're as blind as everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's quite a big pond, so you're going to need to navigate. But then there's a huge pond of utter arseholes who take advantage of people starting out. And for example, it happened to me, and I absolutely can tell you, if you talk to any famous actor or performer, that they will tell you when they started out, there was a time where they never got paid and they were completely shafted.
Because people just want to take advantage, use your...
What they take advantage of is because you're young, you don't want to rock the boat, because there is this feeling that you'll never get any work again. And there has been the classic phrase, somebody actually wrote to me and told me they will make sure I'll never get another panto again. And I must admit, it's a learning curve. This PCR I was talking about.
Right, okay.
One week, he said they wanted people to put people forward for a certain panto, so I put myself forward, only to get a letter back to saying it was fully cast months ago.
Right.
And I was on one of my pissed off days, so I just wrote back, say thank you very much, but can you please make sure that if a thing is fully cast, that it's not still advertising? Yeah. Because it wastes our time. Yeah. I mean, he phoned me up and gave me a right earful. Fucking hell. Basically he was saying he was a big cheese and he can make sure that nobody gets any work. Oh, okay. And of course, for that day, I was thinking, oh shit, I've blown it. Right. Well, but it's an idle threat. Yeah. And how dare anybody be in that position? And I was quite right in my view. Yeah. I mean, things are a lot different now because it's electronic. There's no more stamped addressed envelopes. You just send things by email. Yeah. Or you do it through your agent who does it via email. I mean, I've had a very lucky period. That, again, since Doctor Who, I've been getting straight offers, so I don't have to audition.
Right, it's easier
just,
now.
They phone up my agent and say, "Is Simon available?" Blah 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 blah.
Right.
And then my agent will say, "Well, this is a straight offer. This is the script. If you like it, the part of Eric is yours."
Okay.
I don't bother to read it. It's a job.
Yeah, that's fair
And
enough.
if it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's a job. Some people will say that viewpoint is wrong, but I'm 58 this year, and although I have no mortgage to pay, there are still life expenses.
Yeah, for sure. When you're around famous people, so you've been on the set of Harry Potter and things like that, do you feel like you're around something out of the ordinary? Do you feel like you're around something special? Or do you just think these guys are just like me?
No, you learn to find out. You learn that they are just ordinary actors like anybody else, who've had an amazing career that has elevated their status. But what I do constantly remind myself is this phrase: "Be careful of what you dream of." Because I am now in a position where I work with people that I would have cut my left arm off to work with it in the past. And I am very friendly with a lot of actors who I used to watch on TV when I was a kid.
Right, okay.
And particularly as I was born in 1961, so when Doctor Who started, I was 2.
Right.
So effectively, I'm 2 years older than Doctor Who.
Right, yeah.
And I used to call myself a follower. I followed Doctor Who until it got stopped. And then when it got rebooted, that was a fantasy that Doctor Who came back.
Okay.
And the idea that Doctor Who come back. So the idea that I might get a role in it had been rebooted.
So it got stopped before you'd been on it?
Yes, the story, a lot of political things went on with Doctor Who. And Doctor Who is a very Marmite show.
Right.
People either love it or they hate it. And Michael Grade became controller of television and he cancelled the show. I can't remember the year now, 97? Anyway, then there's a company called Big Finish that does audio stories.
Okay.
And that sort of kept Doctor Who going.
Right.
And Big Finish create their own stories, so they're not audio versions of TV shows.
Okay.
They create a whole thing, and they're whole spin-offs, and it's a whole industry in itself, and it's got a huge following.
Okay.
Because people loved Doctor Who, and there was always the cry to bring Doctor Who back.
Right.
And the story is that, I think it's 2005, Russell T Davies was given the opportunity to reboot Doctor Who. And because they didn't take it seriously, he was given facilities in Wales, in Cardiff,
Right, okay.
thinking it would just fade away.
Right, okay.
But Russell T Davies, being the excellent writer that he is, plus he was a writer because he was a fan too.
Right.
The show became huge. And Christopher Eccleston was the first Doctor back, who was absolutely the right person to sort of start the idea of Doctor Who. And then all the subsequent Doctors have been excellent, regardless of what some of the media coverage says.
And obviously you saw these people as you were following the show, and then ended up working with them.
Oh yeah, I was going to use a very bad word, so I won't.
Carry on.
No, first of all, my agent, it was just a call out of the blue. She said, I've got an audition for Doctor Who. So
Right.
I didn't hear the rest. I just went,
Okay. Right.
and inside me, I'm saying, not having heard what was expected,
Yeah.
I've got to get this.
Right. Okay.
That was it.
Yeah.
I've got to get this. And the audition was in December 2009.
Okay.
And normally I would be in Panto, but
Right.
earlier that year I'd been beaten up and attacked. Hence, I've got a damaged spine and damaged knee, amongst one or two other things. And that's why I walk with a stick.
Okay.
Not because I chain eat Mars bars.
Right.
Which I have to say I find very sickly anyway. But so I was available for the audition, and I went. And for those who don't really know, sometimes you find yourself in a most surreal situation. So first of all, I go to the venue for the audition, and it turns out to be a tiny room in a church.
Okay.
In Tottenham Court Road.
Right.
So that's what. Then there's this table, and I looked at, and as I was signing in, I could see the names of the other rivals, and there were 7 of us. They saw, and 3 others I know personally.
Oh right, okay.
And they are excellent actors.
Okay.
Right, and we found that if we were at the same audition, it would be one of us that gets it.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So that sort of made it easier. That if one of the others got the job, I didn't mind so much.
Right.
Anyway, so it's this tiny room. I'd had the script, which was effectively the scene that people see in the Pandorica opens in series 5.
Okay.
And did it, and I was in there less than 5 minutes.
Right.
So that's how important 5 minutes can be. And I was hoping for a recall, to be honest.
Right.
Hoping for a recall. But 3 days later, I got the call.
Right.
Yeah, and how I heard I'd got Dorian is answered the phone, and it clearly was my agent, and she said, "Can I speak to Dorian, the rather large intergalactic marketeer?" So that's how I knew I got.
Okay, wow.
So what can you remember? What was your question? That I was
that basically when you're around people that you've always been.
So then I find, moving on. So that was in December. In the middle of January, so only 3 or 4 weeks later, have to go for a read through.
Right.
And at read throughs they have it all set up like a director's table, and we all sit around. I went in, and at a certain chair, there was my photograph with a piece of paper with my name and the character I was playing.
Right.
That's it. And then next to me there was Nick Briggs, who does the voice of the Daleks and the Cybermen.
Okay.
Then next to me, Alex Kingston. Alex Kingston was to play the character Dr. Song opposite me in the first episode of the series. And so the Doctor Who fans will know exactly who I'm talking about. And then next to her was Matt Smith.
Right.
And then next to Matt Smith was his companion, and Karen Gillian. Anyway, I'm turned this way, and I'm talking to Nick Briggs, and I'm being fascinated by his machinery he uses to change his voice. There's a tap on the shoulder, and turn round, and it's Matt Smith. And of course I'm like, right. And he puts his hand out and goes, "Hello, I'm Matt. Saw your audition." He went like, I thought, shit. Because when you do your audition, you only think the director, the producer's going to say. You don't expect that to other cast members.
Right, okay.
And then just past him coming round was Alex Kingston. And she said, "Hello, sweetie," which actually turns out to be one of her catchphrases in the show. Right. "Hello, sweetie. Saw your audition. Well done."
Okay. Because you're getting recognition.
Yes. So that's that. And then I saw across the way the series producer and writer, Stephen Moffat. He then started to come round. Of course, at this stage, I'm becoming quite overwhelmed.
Right.
And he shook my hand and he said, "I'm so pleased we managed to secure you."
Oh, wow.
And I honestly thought, I remember saying inside my head, "Fuck, they think I'm somebody else."
Oh shit!
That's how I felt.
Wow.
Because I suddenly became aware, looking around the room, I was the only one I didn't know.
Right. Okay.
There were all these names of.
That's cool.
So that was quite overwhelming experience, but I got through it. And then on the afternoon of filming this scene with Alex Kingston, they made me up. I was in my costume. I was then put in a blacked out window car to go to which was effectively a wine bar.
Okay.
And we were filming down in the bowels
Right.
of Cardiff.
Okay.
And it was en route. It suddenly dawned on me. I thought, shit, this is happening.
Yeah.
And there's no return.
Right.
I can't run away. I'm in a stupid costume with a blue face.
Yeah.
And then momentarily I became quite nervous.
Okay.
Because I clearly remember myself, okay, just got to get through this. So by this evening, it'll all be done.
Right.
That's how I...
Yeah.
I remember that distinctly. But I've done plays and things with well-known actors. And at first, during the rehearsal period, it's very scary talking to them. But once you find that these good and great do have days where they're crap,
Yeah.
which falls in exactly the same line as you do,
Yeah.
then that's it. You're
Yeah,
act. You still respect them
Yeah.
for what they've achieved, but they become more human.
Yeah, because I think that somebody that we perceive as good or great, when they realise that they've had an off day, they know straight away. And if they think, oh shit, other people now have had an off day, then that humbles them down as well, which is...
And also, you hear stories of actors being very diva-ish. And from my experience, the really big names aren't diva-ish at all.
Oh, okay.
It's the people around them that are.
Oh, okay.
And the number of times I've done a project, and you'll be told, you mustn't look at so-and-so in the eye.
Fucking hell.
Right? And of course, they haven't said that at all. It's just
Yeah.
their agent who said it, and you think, what the...
Yeah. You told me in the past that nowadays there's a lot of young actors and they want instant fame from reality TV. Tell me about that.
It's more than that people think if they take a certain route down the reality TV line, they'll have instant fame and that's it, they'll be made for life.
Don't you think reality TV is weird because it's it's not reality?
No. It's the complete opposite of what it's...
I just find like it's just a really weird concept. Like the way it's shot it seems to be a bit more real than a normal TV series, but it's still scripted.
Yeah, at a certain level.
And their characters seem to carry on social media as it's like they're always in that role.
How about best? I'm not anti-reality TV, full stop.
Okay.
I used to watch Big Brother when it first came out.
Right.
There was an interest. But for me, the interest waned after about the second or third series.
But don't you think Big Brother, the original Big Brothers, were? I think they seem to be more like a project, whereas now, like it's a whole thing on its own now.
Yeah, I think now what it's become is exactly what you say. It's a product for the production company to earn a lot of money.
Yeah.
And there is no care taken over the people involved. And there is this belief, all you have to do is become famous.
Yeah.
Whereas becoming famous is a byproduct of what you do. But if you have no skill, other than you look pretty in certain people's eyes, and maybe you're cute and funny and blah, blah, blah. If you've got no substance to you, it won't last because people will get bored to that. Now, I'm not saying that all reality persons are thick and stupid. I'm not saying that at all. But we've heard so many committing suicide.
Yeah.
Because their fame has waned.
Yeah.
And that's what's very sad. You shouldn't go into anything just for the fame. I mean, as an actor, I'd like to have a higher status.
Yeah.
So there's more chance I'll be offered more work.
Right.
Because very often, it happens now, since Doctor Who the number of projects I've been asked to get involved with purely because they think a Doctor Who actor will help promote their project,
Right.
is unbelievable.
Okay.
And in some cases it's worked, and in other cases it hasn't.
Right.
I don't know how I feel about it. And I suppose I could say, at a certain level, I'm being used. How dare you use my?
But that's what you want it for.
And
though, isn't
then,
it?
and then at the other level, I'm saying exactly that. Oh yes, as long as I'm in whatever you're producing,
Yeah.
to use me to promote something and then not use me subsequently if the project is picked up, that I do balk at.
Yeah.
But it's like everything else. You find a lot of actors give up within 2 years of leaving college because they're not getting. First of all, they're either not getting work, or they're not getting the work they feel they should have. The general standard of projects is actually a lot lower than people will perceive.
Right.
There's some. Don't get me wrong. There are some excellent projects, but the general standard required from you, I have learned and observed, is not as high as you would think. Some shows like The X Factor.
Right.
And again, initially when it came out, I thought it was very good.
Yeah.
Very good indeed. And it gave an opportunity for certain acts to be seen.
Yeah.
Right. What I didn't like of the X Factor is them spending time showing us some of the less successful candidates and effectively poking fun at them.
Yeah.
Showing us less successful, fine, but then poking fun at them, I think.
But now.
So people have been encouraged to humiliate themselves.
Yeah. So it changes the whole dynamic of everything because now TV's more ratings than anything else. In terms of, like, they will have absolute idiots on these reality TV shows because they're stupid and people want to watch them. But a lot of the reason why I don't watch TV is because I feel like I'm dumbing down if I watch these kind of things. So, and then back to it, obviously people like you are putting effort in to get these roles, and when you've got things now like Love Island, anybody with a good social media following that looks good and fits the part gets approached. They're not totally acting, but there's definitely script involved.
Yes. It has to be.
Yeah, because not everybody's entertaining 24/7. But then this is why I think people are committing suicide, because then they hit this peak of fame, which they love, and then probably not even 2 years, it comes straight back down.
I mean, I could say, because of Doctor Who, when I first appeared, for about 6-7 years, I didn't have to go to auditions or anything at all.
Yeah, that's good.
But now, I find I do still. But it's okay. It's part of the process. So I, in a sort of way, could say I had a bit of fame, and now it's waning. But you don't look at it that way.
Yeah, you're still enjoying yourself.
It's 10 years I've been going on the sci-fi circuit, for example. And from there, I've had sort of byproducts of it.
Right.
So, for example, I would never have written an autobiography at all. It's just what happened. I was being asked to, and before that, generally speaking, you ask the same questions. So, how long does it take to put the makeup on? What is it like working with Matt Smith? And of course, every time you deliver that, you have to deliver it as if you've never been asked the question before. Right. On the other side of the coin, you do get some very curious questions. I remember, she was about 12, and she wanted to know why I raised my eyebrow on a certain line.
Oh.
I couldn't even remember what she was talking about. In reality, it was probably me thinking, shit, what's the next line? Okay. And I gave myself a microsecond by raising.
Right, okay.
And so I asked her, to give myself that time, I asked her, well, what was the significance for you? And she said it changed the whole meaning of the line.
Oh.
Again, is an example of people coming to conclusions about something that never happened.
Right. Okay.
So I thought, when at these Q&A sessions in America, a person didn't turn up. 2 or 3 times that happened.
Right.
So I put together a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
So there'd be something for the fans to look at, and it also helped me. Next slide. We'll talk about that now.
Okay.
Right. And in doing so, I answered most of the questions they would normally ask.
Right.
So the Q&A session afterwards, I thought, would be shorter because their questions have been answered. But no, they came up with more. But then they
were better questions.
Then from that, I came back to the UK once, and I got a call. Would you be interested in doing an evening with ...
Okay.
Yeah. What do you usually do?
Right.
And up to that point, I hadn't done anything.
Right. Okay.
So I told him about this presentation thing.
Okay. Is this your one-man show?
My one-man show, and it was called "My Dalek Has a Puncture," and so I did it a few times. Anyway, I did a tour in 2014.
Right.
And at one of the shows, my publisher, Dan Grubb from Fantastic Books Publishing, after the show, just handed me the back of his program, and on it he drew a draft contract to put my show into print.
Wow.
So whatever I said, there was something that meant something to it.
Okay.
And he didn't want it as a show, he wanted it as a trilogy.
Okay.
And so we have My Dalek Has a Puncture, and My Dalek Has Another Puncture.
Which is the book?
Which is the book that I'm promoting at the moment.
Right.
My Dalek Has a Puncture talks about, it's a series of anecdotes.
Okay.
Answering questions along the way. So in the first book, for drama students, I've got tips about what you need, the tools of the trade,
right.
What you need to get from your college, and if they're not producing it, ask for it.
Right.
As well as anecdotes about all sorts of things, not just acting.
Yeah.
Right up to the point I'm offered Dorian.
Okay.
My Dalek Has Another Puncture is more anecdotes about various things, but it includes how things have changed for me.
Right.
And there's an element of making new friends and taking different paths. So as I touched on that, so I'm asked regularly to give talks at charities.
Okay.
I'm asked to be a visiting tutor at drama colleges.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And more recently, I've just been asked just to turn up and talk.
Okay.
Particularly in America, they like the sound of my voice, so it doesn't matter what I say.
Because you're British.
Yeah, there is that. Because of that, I've got what they perceive the archetypal,
the typical
British. PR.
Right.
And yet my lineage, when you read my book, is very different.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's it. And the idea that I'm just being asked to turn up and talk.
Yeah.
And
that's flattering, isn't it?
And that is very flattering. And so what I've done is sometimes I've taken the gamble,
right,
and opened it up by saying, right, what do you want me to talk about today?
Okay.
And because some of them want to know about acting and all that sort of thing, but then somebody will go off at some sort of tangent about anything, something about what was it the other week on the cruise? They wanted my opinion about donkeys, and I thought they were being
taking the piss.
Yes, I thought they were taking the piss a bit, but what it was, they were very interested in wildlife.
Okay.
And the hardship that some animals are put through.
Okay.
So that's how. So we extended from that,
okay.
and then so with the audience, I have a conversation.
Yeah.
And then I'll find some route to go off on.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm asked my political opinion about certain things, and sometimes I give it if I think I'm going to get a favourable response, but it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a very dangerous path if you veer into the 3 taboos.
Mm.
So, but otherwise, it's a hoot at the between hours. And in a couple of occasions, I've been flown over to America specifically for one afternoon.
Fucking hell.
So when people say you lead a glamorous lifestyle, that sort of thing, I will agree, has a bit of glam about it.
Yeah.
But the actual physical travel and making arrangements is a bore.
Yeah.
I have to say that. I don't demand business or first class travel, but I can understand why some who don't really want to do the job.
Right. Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
really
I guess
want to
if they're calling you, then they've got to kind of come up with your requests, don't they?
Indeed. But I'm not that demanding, and although I regularly ask for things, I couldn't draw the sort of fees that. I think the reason I get more work is because I'm cheap, or cheaper. But I'm not cheap.
Yeah.
But I'm. They can't afford Matt Smith, but they could probably put me on a little tour for the same amount of money as Matt Smith.
Right. Okay.
So, and what I do get a little buzz about is they promoted the fact that I'm going to be there, and people turn up.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that is cool. And one of the most bizarre things, I was asked to go to Tulsa.
Where's that?
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay.
To open a vodka bar. For somebody who's TT, that is ironic in itself.
Yeah.
But they made it a whole Doctor Who themed event,
right?
Including screening one of my episodes at the local cinema.
Oh wow, okay.
So I've got a photograph of my name up on the cinema.
And obviously this gets you more work, and then it helps promote your book.
Yes, and that's it. And so to have things, and what I've learned, I've got to churn out books. You get the initial when you're promoting, and something's published first of all.
Right.
There's this. And it comes, and then it fades.
Yeah.
So the trilogy now. My Dalek Has Another Puncture is out now, which talks about how things changed for me and where I am now.
Right.
Then the third part is Let Zygons Be Zygons, which Doctor Who fans will understand.
Okay.
And it's really talking, there's the phrase, let bygones be bygones,
right,
so it's a play on that.
Yeah.
And so what I've taken is comments that people have made when they've either read my book or been to my show and picked up on things that they're having difficulty with. It could become a bit depressing, but I'm hoping I can filter in a few funny things.
Yeah, and just balance
because
it out.
life is very funny.
Yeah, balance it out.
Very, very funny. You can only laugh at certain things.
Yeah.
There is no other response than just to laugh at it because it can be so ludicrous. Something that happened with me many, many years ago. I was in the civil service.
Right.
And I was fortunate enough, I sat some exam and I was offered a position in Westminster.
Okay.
And it was for the Department of Transport and Environment. I was no more than a pen pusher, a paper pusher.
Yeah.
I was nobody important at all.
Right.
I just happened to be working at Westminster. Then some other people who were sort of neighbours and things.
Right.
I sort of kept to myself, really. I didn't tell him. And what came to the fore was that somebody saw me at Victoria.
Okay.
Right? Victoria. And my route then, I used to live in South Ruislip, which is northwest London, which in fact is part of the constituency of Boris Johnson.
Okay.
Right? And that was on London, it was on the Central Line, and I used to take the Central Line through to Oxford Circus and then change to the Victoria Line, go a couple of stops to Victoria, and then walk to my office from there. But also, not far from Victoria, but the completely opposite direction, was the MI6 building.
Okay.
So suddenly there were rumours I was a spy.
Oh. Wow.
And no matter what I tried to do or say, nobody would believe that I wasn't.
That's weird. Isn't
It is, and that's how people. If you don't tell people when they want to know something, they'll make it up, and then what they make up becomes fact.
Yeah.
And there's no chemical or anything on the planet that will erase that
That's a hard thing with the internet as well, because you could start a rumor, and there's often been rumors about different celebrities, and then it's clearly not true, and then you could say, yeah, but this and this happened, which counteracts the rumor, and they say, yeah, but so what? And it's like, well, you know, we can make up anything about anybody.
And then they'll say things like, well, you would say that, wouldn't you?
Yeah. All right, what am I going to say? Nothing. Okay.
It is so bizarre. I mean, on the other side of the coin, there can be very sad things that happen. There are a number of people who think I earn a lot more money than I do.
Okay.
And they think I earn the same sort of salary as Matt Smith.
Okay.
And two former friends, individually at different times, asked me if I'd pay off their mortgage. And at first, the first time it happened, I thought they were having struggles for that month.
Right.
Now, I would have more than, I would have, because they were friends.
Yeah.
If it was they needed just a little help that month, I would have had no problem at all. But no, they actually wanted me to pay it off.
Just because?
Because they think I'm a multi-millionaire.
Yeah.
And even if I was, why should I? I mean, that's the other thing. But if I won the lottery, if I won 160 million, there are several people on my list. I would gladly pay off their mortgage. But then I could fall in the trap of throwing my money around.
Yeah.
So you can, it's just so funny. But there's a website somewhere, somebody pointed it out to me. What are certain celebrities worth? What is their worth?
Okay.
And they put in my name, and it came up as $2 million. And it's $2 million, mostly from a film called Arrivederci Roma. Right. I wasn't in Arrivederci Roma.
Oh.
Okay. Arrivederci Roma was about 1968.
Okay.
I was 7.
Yeah.
Right. But I was in a film called Arrivederci Millwall.
Okay.
Which was a student film that had a little bit of buzz about it. It went on the circuit and it did quite well.
But it didn't.
But none of us would have earned $2 million. Right? So that's that. And my immediate response, well, where is it?
Yeah.
If somebody says, I feel like going somewhere and saying, look, this site says I'm worth $2 million. Anyway, we did it again whilst on the cruise. Because somebody else mentioned I was worth $2 million, tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
And so we did it, and you went to, and you did a refresh.
Yeah.
I'm now worth $12 million.
Jesus.
So I want even a portion of that.
Yeah.
20% of that would do me nicely. So, but that sort of thing does get out, and some people who know you could have read that and then are suspicious as why you haven't told them, or that you're not as gregarious with your money as they feel you should be. But it is strange. I mean, there are certain, and we've all got people in our lives that if you had that sort of wealth, you would more than
for sure
to help them out.
Yeah.
You know, and I think at a certain level. If I had that sort of money, they would definitely be in my will. But I would quite like the pleasure of seeing them enjoying the gift.
Yeah, for sure.
But there you go.
What's coming up? Have you got anything immediately coming up work-wise?
I haven't got my card with me. I'm currently a regular in a radio series. Called The Hawk Chronicles.
Right. What radio is that?
It's an international radio.
Okay.
It's produced in America,
right,
and it's available on Apple Podcasts and iTunes, iHeartRadio.
Okay.
Is it Mixcloud or something?
SoundCloud.
It's, something Mixcloud.
Oh yeah, I think Mixcloud's the thing.
But if people go to my website, they will know. Well, fine. So, and there, ironically, it's a spoof. It's a spoof on James Bond, really.
Oh, right, okay.
But it's an American agent in the future.
Right.
who's out to get intergalactic baddies.
Okay.
And I play a character called Tony Simon, who's a sort of MI6 agent.
Okay.
Yeah. And another good friend of mine, Clive Ward. But he plays the sort of M character.
Right.
And also another character as well, Jaffra. And that came about. I was asked to do a guest appearance in one episode, 103.
Okay. Yeah.
And I've just finished recording episode 133.
All right.
So
Okay.
I've done 30 episodes.
Wow.
And modern technology, I could just record it on my mobile phone and send it to them by email.
That's awesome.
On this MP3 file.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
they do their trickery and
Yeah,
paper.
yeah.
And all of us, I mean, it's American actors, English, German, South African, and one or two. It's a whole
Wow, okay.
mixture of actors. And we all do the same.
Right.
And yet when you hear the final
You'd
product,
have no idea.
you have no idea.
Wow.
So,
That's awesome.
and it's very good.
What's your website, just for people to
My personal website is FisherBecker.info. So
Okay.
it's www.FisherBecker, that's my surname without the hyphen, .info.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quickly to wrap up, what advice would you give 18-year-old you?
What advice would I give the 18-year-old me? Don't bother with your A-levels. Start acting at the age of 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you do if this wasn't your job, for a job?
What would I do? Well, I've got into writing more, so there
Okay.
would definitely be an element of that. I like teaching, but I would want to be on a sort of one-to-one. Couldn't possibly be a classroom teacher.
Right, yeah.
I would. My thought transference would end me in prison. some of the processes.
Say no more.
Yeah.
So is the best way to keep up to date with you from the website? You're not on social media, right?
Yes, I'm on Facebook. So
Oh, you are?
People, they can find me on Facebook. And they know it's my site because the main banner is a photograph of my cat,
Okay.
who alas died a couple of years ago.
Right,
but
okay.
I haven't yet had the heart to take it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to quickly, because on New Year's Eve I was at a party and two friends of mine, while I was drunk, made me pinky promise I'd give them a shout out on the next episode.
All right.
So where are we? Connie Track and George Berries. I kept my word, so there you go. Simon, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Obviously I'll put all the links to the websites and Facebook and everything on the descriptions, and it's been a pleasure. Hopefully, yeah, you can keep up to date and I'll keep up to date with everything that's going on. I hope this year of work goes well for you.
Don't we all?
Yeah. Guys, you can subscribe to Simon's YouTube as well. Those links will be on. Subscribe to In the Chair with the Barber. I've got a new In the Chair with the Barber Instagram account, so all the official stuff is going on there. And that's it. My name is Nicolaou, Simon Fisher-Becker, In the Chair with the Barber. Stay tuned and you'll see me soon. Yeah.